baby almost, the 23rd of December.
Ah,
The draft board had already sent me a notice. You know, they were drafting them young in World War II. And I knew it wasn't long before they'd get me, so that's why I volunteered for the Marines, because I wanted to go where I wanted to go.
yeah.
I didn't want to be drafted into the Army.
Okay. First thing we need to do is spell your name, last name first.
Last name first, Williams, Williams.
And first name?
John, John, Richard. John Richard Williams.
I know you're in the Marines. And rank,
My rank,
your rank.
corporal.
Okay.
It was 4 of us boys in the service. My parents died when I was young, and our foster parents raised me, Mr. and Mrs. Oliver, and she had 2 boys. And he was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and John was a chief in the Navy, and my real brother was a sergeant in the Marine Air Wing, and I was the youngest, and I wound up being a corporal in the Marine Corps too.
That's good, all 4.
4 of us, yeah, we all came through fine.
Now, why did you choose the Marines?
A friend of mine came by and told me that he had joined the Marines that morning. And I was laying bricks on the wall up in the West End. I told my friend next to me, I said, "Davy, you can have my tools." He said, "Where are you going, boy?" I said, "I'll see you when the war's over." I jumped down, went on and joined the Marine Corps.
Now, do you go off to Parris Island?
Parris Island, yeah.
How was Parris Island?
It was rough. When you survive Parris Island, you could survive most anything. In World War II, they only they were limited on the time to get you ready to go into the service. You know, to be assigned to an outfit. And they pushed you right along.
I bet they did.
They did.
Do you have any memorable stories about Parris Island?
Not really. It was just,
Hard.
the only thing I can remember is when the drill instructor told you to fall in. He didn't care if you tore those doors off the barracks, just so you got out there and got in line, in formation.
Now, after Parris Island, where did they send you?
I was sent to Charleston Navy Yard for a while as a guard there in the Navy Yard. We had to check in the civilians coming in and out of the yard and check their lunch boxes as they leave to see that they didn't carry anything that they weren't supposed to carry outside the Navy Yard. And after that, I was sent to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and put into a mortar school. And that's where I wound up being a mortarman, 81 millimeter mortar.
Now, after mortar school, where'd you go?
I went to, well, we were shipped to San Diego, California, and then I was sent to Guadalcanal. But the fighting was over when I got there. And that's where the 6th Marine Division was formed on Guadalcanal. We stayed.
Even though the fighting was over, what was Guadalcanal like?
It was a staging area for the 4th Marine Regiment, the 22nd and the 29th. And of course, it was Henderson Field there too, which was a good airfield. That's why the Marines took that airfield. They had to have it. Mm-hmm. The 6th Marine Division was banded overseas.
Now, after the training you did at Guadalcanal, what was next on the agenda?
We shipped out to Okinawa. And we landed there Easter Sunday, April the 1st, 1945.
April Fool's Day. Tell me what it was like. I mean, leaving Guadalcanal, you know now you're in for it. You all are going, and what was it like, you know, riding up there? What did the men talk about? What did they feel?
Well, when we when we were on Guadalcanal, we didn't know where we were going or when we were going. They brought some troop transports there, and we loaded their gear on it, and we would go around the island and make a landing the next morning, a simulated landing. And then we'd load back up on the ship, and we'd go around the island again and wind up at the same place and make another landing. And that happened 2 or 3 times. And then one morning when I went up on deck, there was no island in sight. We knew we were on our way somewhere, but I didn't know where. And of course the scuttlebutt just flew everywhere, all kinds of rumors, but then our lieutenant, our platoon leader, Lieutenant Folks, and Lieutenant Mabee, Howard Mabee, they got us all together, and we had a map there, and they showed us where we were going and what we were going to do and where we were going to land. And that was it. A couple of days we were there.
After you knew where you were going, some of your crew had experience,
Oh, yes.
and some of
Some of them,
hadn't done a landing yet.
most of us were just raw recruits, but a few of them were seasoned veterans. They had made several landings, or they had made other landings. Some of them had been on Guadalcanal. But I would say the majority of us, we had never been in combat before.
What did people talk about?
Well, it's hard to say, a little of everything. We had no idea what we were up against or what it was going to be like, but we had been pretty well trained, so everybody was pretty well comfortable that we knew what we were going to do.
Now, when Okinawa comes in sight, were they already bombarding it?
Oh, yes. I was going to tell you, when I went up on deck that morning, way off in the distance, I could see the flashes in the sky. It looked like a big storm off in the distance, but it was those battle wagons firing at the island. And the closer we got, the more you could see of it.
So you went ashore that day?
That's right.
Tell me about loading up, tell me about
Well, climbing down,
meals, tell me about all those.
climbing down that cargo net is an experience I'll never forget. The thought ran through my mind that I didn't know whether I was going to be alive that night to see the sun go down. But we were very fortunate. It was an easy landing. I went ashore and never got my foot wet. But the Amtrak took us right on shore, and when it dropped the ramp down, we came out, and I never got my foot wet. And the first day it wasn't bad at all, and we captured Yontan Airfield. And then the division swung north, and the resistance wasn't too bad. And after we secured the northern part of the island, it was sort of like a field day. We were just had it easy. And then the 27th Army Division ran into the main force in the south, and it pulled them out to the line and put us in there. And from then on, it was Katie bar the door.
Now, they march over, you still think things are gonna be maybe not too bad.
Well, up north, it was real good. We were having a good time. But when we got to the southern part of the island, everything changed.
Tell me what happened when you got there.
Well, like I said, they tried to take Sugarloaf Hill. That was the main line of defense. And that thing just could not be cracked. But after 11 times, the 29th finally stayed upon it. And then we pushed further south. But we were shelled every night, all day. During the daytime, it wasn't too bad because our planes kept them kind of in the caves, but they were still able to fire at us. But at nighttime, they brought those guns out and made up for the lost time.
Now, was Sugarloaf pretty well drilled full of caves? And
Oh yeah, it was honeycombed with caves.
yeah,
Yep,
just like on Iwo and
just like it, even more so.
yeah, they're really sort of the only very limited ways of fighting that.
It's very seldom you ever saw a Japanese in the open. They were mostly hidden, because at nighttime they would come out. But during the daytime, they were mostly stayed in the caves where you couldn't see them, firing at you from concealed positions. The first Japanese I ever ran across face to face was in the northern part. We had gone through a little small town. And as we were leaving, I was bringing up the rear of the column. I turned around to my right, and he came around the side of a building. And I startled him, and he startled me, and I shot at him. He went down behind the building. I don't know whether I hit him or not, but I didn't go over there to investigate.
Yeah, the Sugarloaf, you all attacked the thing 11 times?
11 times. The 22nd tried 8 times and was driven off. And the last 3 times, the 29th went up there, and we stayed up there. I've got it's a documentary in here. I brought this along. Have you ever seen Sugarloaf Hill?
Yeah.
Did I show it to you?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, where is it? Back here somewhere.
Well, we can go through that.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, when you all attacked, what happened when you came up and you knew there was a cave? What did you do?
Well,
Cave to cave.
I didn't have a lot of that to confront me because I was in a mortar platoon. I was a gunner in a mortar platoon. And usually we were more or less kind of dug in behind an embankment or something where we shot up and over.
Up and over.
And so the mortar platoon didn't really have a lot of that to confront us.
The people that were up, that
The
were
riflemen.
up there, did they do the flamethrower?
Oh, yeah.
And all that?
Yeah, we had, but the tanks did a lot of it too. The tanks had flamethrowers on them. But where they couldn't get up there, up an embankment, you had to go up there bodily with a tank on your back, and their casualties were extremely high.
Yeah, you can bet on that. Even when you finally take Sugarloaf, you sort of, you're standing on it, but you're wondering, what's in it?
I never went in one of them to find out.
No, but you do wonder.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, say
There's
you had-
really no estimate of how many Japanese were killed on Okinawa because, like I said, a lot of them were blown up. The caves were sealed, and no telling how many enemy were sealed up in there. I think they estimate 60,000 were killed.
But a lot of them were just sealed up in the cave.
Right. I'm sure.
How long did, once you got down to the south, how long did all that take?
We were 82 days taking that island. 82 days. I've got a little notebook at home where I kept an account of how much ammunition I had for my two guns. And we were there 6 to 7 days, and we were down to 60 rounds of ammunition for the two guns.
Now, where did you start?
Well, we didn't have a whole lot more than that because everything had to be brought ashore on your back when we went ashore. So every man carried a load of shells on his back.
Now, besides that load of shells on your back, what else did you carry, and what do you think the whole thing weighed?
Well, for one thing, when I went to land the landing net, I had a 45-pound base plate on my back, along with all my gear, and a half a dozen hand grenades and a couple of bandoliers of ammunition for my rifle. I was loaded down. If I'd fallen overboard, I'd have gone to the bottom.
It's been an instant anchor.
I would have gone to the bottom.
You must have had 150 pounds.
Every bit of it. The mortar was broken down into 3 pieces. The bipod, the base plate, and the tube. So each man carried one of them. But I think the biggest thing we had to contend with was the mud and the rain. It rained for 16 straight days on that island. A typhoon hit us while we were there, and nothing could move. They couldn't bring any ammunition or anything up. They had to drop everything by airplane.
Every foot, your boot gets stuck.
Or you would stink in that deep in mud. That's what we had to contend with. Nowhere to get out of the rain. You just had to lay in your foxhole and get soaking wet, night and day.
Yeah, speaking of mold. Yeah,
That was, of course, now being in a mortar platoon, when they started shelling us, a lot of times we would get up in, wherever it was available, we'd get up in some of those tombs that the Okinawans had dug in the side of the hill. We would get up in there and get away from that shelling. And a lot of times we would set our guns up in the little courtyard where we could get in those tombs if it got too bad and get away from it. But we could still fire a weapon from there.
the day-to-day living, especially during that period of raining for 16 days. Just trying to keep, I was gonna say keep dry, you didn't keep dry.
You can't keep dry.
But keeping fed and keeping things reasonably clean so that they'll function.
It was a problem. It really was a problem. It just didn't lack up. It was a monsoon season. That typhoon hit us at a bad time. But everything came to a halt. Nobody moved.
I guess the Japanese had the same problem.
Well, they were dug in. They fared a whole lot better than we did.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things, the fortification of Okinawa was a step above all the other islands. I mean, they had been there so long.
They had, from what I understand, what was told to me, that the native population, the Okinawans, they were looked down by the Japanese, looked down upon. And they used them as more or less as slave labor and made them dig all these caves for them, which they did very well.
And the general quality of equipment, as I understand, was better on Okinawa.
It was nothing compared to our tanks, though. Their tanks was nothing compared to ours. We had far superior equipment.
Now, during the time that you were fighting on the island, were you aware of how hard it was on the Navy offshore and the losses they were taking?
Every evening we could see those kamikazes come in there and drop right down into those ships. The Navy lost over 5,000 sailors. And I I think I read where they lost about 40 destroyers and different ships, either put out of commission or actually sunk.
Pretty phenomenal.
But you could see them come in every afternoon, right out of the sun, and dive into those ships. We had a grandstand seat, because we could look right down the harbor and watch them.
You know,
It was, when they came in, when the kamikazes came in, every ship in that harbor would open fire on them. And that sky was black with shell bursts. And you'd wonder how any plane would ever get through it, and they'd get through it. I saw them hit a battle wagon, and that thing never even stopped firing. It just kept right on going, just like a mosquito hit it. Something else.
you know, visually watching that, I mean, you know, you're cheering for the boats. They get a plane, that's, you know, that's great. I mean, everybody cheers, and but boy, you see them get hit too.
Lots of them got hit.
Eerie watching.
It is. It's, like I said, we had a grandstand seat on the island looking out there at the harbor. We could see them. They'd come in every afternoon.
How did you deal with losing friends?
It's hard. We were very fortunate in our mortar platoon. Although a lot of Marines got killed on Okinawa, we only lost two of our men killed. Several of them got wounded, but only 2 of them got killed. One of them, a mortar shell landed right there and blew him all to pieces. And then our truck driver got killed. He ran over a landmine.
Just keep going.
Yep.
How many days did you say it was?
82 days.
82 days.
I never felt safe the whole time I was on that island, even after the island was secured. I never felt safe until I got on board ship and left it.
You know, there's sort of no telling how many Japanese were just off in the bush.
No telling.
Was there evidence of Japanese sneaking into camp?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. At nighttime they would try to come through our lines, and one of my buddies shot one and he landed right by me. And Saxon T. Judd, he asked me, he said, "Is he alive?" Willie, he called me Willie. I reached over and felt him, and he was dead. I said, "Yeah, he's dead." He landed right there beside me.
That'll make you feel not safe.
Oh yeah.
That's a little worrisome, to say the very least. Tell me how the mortars work and what you go through to put the shell where you want the shell. And
Well, a mortar is a high-angle fired weapon. You drop it down through the end of it, the open end. It slides down. It hits a firing pin at the bottom. That shell has got what they call increments all around the bottom of this base of the shell. That shotgun shell explodes when it hits that firing pin. Those increments burn, and those gases force that shell out of that tube. And when it comes out of there, it's armed. Sometimes after you fired a whole lot, those unburnt increments are in the bottom of it, and it causes a misfire. That shotgun shell doesn't explode. So even though it's hadn't fired, the inertia of hitting the bottom causes that pin to pop out. And it rides along the edge of that barrel until it clears the end of it, and that comes out. That thing is armed then. A raindrop will almost set it off. So when we have a misfire like that, we clear everybody away from a gun. I get a man to unscrew the barrel or the base plate. He tilts it up And I'll hold my hand over the end of the tube like that and let that shell wedge between my fingers. Then I push that pin back in and put the safety pin in it. If it slips out of my hand and hits the ground, it's going to explode because it's armed.
You don't want to make the same mistake.
You don't want to make that
once.
mistake.
Tell me about the three pieces that are carried, because you carry the gun and you also carry the ammunition.
Yeah.
Tell me about three pieces and assembling and what that's all about.
Well, the base plate, it's a tube, a base plate, and a bipod. Each man carries a piece of it. And you just put the base plate down, be sure you got a good solid piece of ground to put it on. Then the tube screws and twists into it. Then the bipod just clamps around it. And that's it. Then you have a gun sight on it. Now you have to be careful that you've got clearance. Now on Guadalcanal, the gunner wasn't watching his mass, what they call mass clearance. And we were firing for effect, and the base plate kept sinking down and down, and when one of the shells went off, it hit a palm leaf. And we had a shell burst right over top of the gun. It wounded several men, but it didn't kill anybody. So you have to be careful of that.
How do you aim it? And do you have forward people
No, you have
radio back to you? Or?
You have a forward observer, and you have a sighting stake, and you fire, which gives you the general direction of where you want to fire it. And we usually fire by what is known as a bracketing method. We fire a smoke grenade or a smoke shell, and if you see it land over your target, then you drop back 100 yards and fire another one. And then the third, you cut that distance in half, and the third one is usually right on your target. The bracketing method. That's one thing you learn in the infantry. When you're in combat, if you see a Japanese mortar land behind you and one land in front of you, you better move one way or the other, because the next one's going to be right on top of you. They know how to do it too.
Yeah, I understand. They were pretty good with it.
They were pretty good with it.
Yeah. What was the range of that gun?
Lord, I've forgotten now, but it'll shoot a long ways. I'd say well over a mile. Yeah, it'll shoot a long ways.
And more than one kind of explosive?
Oh yeah, we had a HE light, then a demolition, and then a smoke shell. And then we shot flares. We could lay a smoke screen with it. It would help a whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, down south, as you all progressed, you took Sugarloaf. What happened after that?
Well, we went on through Naha then, and then we just kept pushing them back further and further until they had nowhere to go. But we made another landing too. They loaded us on board Higgins boats, and we circled around and made another lane behind them and cut them off. That's after General Buckner got killed.
Tell me about General Buckner.
Well, I don't know too much about him, but I know he was in the front lines at a forward observation post, and a shell landed on his observation post and blew a piece of coral and killed him.
Now, when you all went around on the Higgins boats and came in, was there any resistance there?
No, it was a very, very light resistance. What they were trying to do, from what I understand, they had these huge mortars that were on sort of like a launching platform. They were trying to get around. They were so large, they looked like 50-gallon drums coming through the air. You could see them. They were so big. And they wanted to land around behind them before they had a chance to move these things around and aim it in a different direction. And that's what we did.
So you got to them before they moved. Were there many of the Japanese that surrendered once you got them?
Some of them did, but not a whole lot. More surrendered on that island, from what I understand, than any other island. But a majority of them would kill themselves before they would surrender.
So it's sort of the same problem.
Same problem.
Well, now you all are hardened soldiers. Been 75 days, you've got a few more to go. At some point, there must have been discussion of what's next, and what's next is Japan.
Well, everybody thought about that. When the island was secured and we were on board ship, we were shipped back to Guam. And we were already drawing our supplies. We'd already drawn our new equipment. And we were training to go on another operation when the atomic bomb was dropped, which made me very happy.
How did you all hear about the bomb? What did they say? What did people
It was
think?
rumors. Rumors were flying around several days that something big had happened. But we didn't find out until I guess, the second one, I know that we didn't find out anything until the second one was dropped. Then rumors really were flying. And then it finally came on the air that they had dropped an atomic bomb and Japan had surrendered. We were on Guam then.
And then what happened?
Everybody in camp was shooting the rifles up in the air and everything. Very happy.
Yeah, just
Very
about
happy.
falling bullets. Yeah, well, there wasn't much discussion then. Later, when you heard people, discussing whether or not you thought the bomb was a good idea or whatever, what did you all think?
I thank God every night that Harry Truman dropped that bomb. I really feel deep in my heart that I wouldn't be here sitting here talking to you now if he hadn't dropped that bomb. We were getting ready to go to Japan.
When people went to Japan, and look what they found. A lot of stuff sitting up there. War's over. Where did you go?
Well, the division went to China then. We were shipped to Tsingtao, China, to accept the Japanese surrender.
Tell me what that was like.
Well, we were billeted in the Shantung University, right next to a racetrack. And I never will forget it. General Shepard, who was the commanding general of our division, he was stood on a little box so that he would be just as tall as a Japanese commander. He didn't want to look up to him. He wanted to look down. Now, that's the truth.
That's interesting, because the Japanese are usually known as being short.
But he was a tall man.
So that surrender was everybody that was, I guess,
On,
the other side of the Sea of Japan, everybody that was over
I
there.
guess, I don't know. But I've got a certificate in my book here. I want to show it to you.
Okay. When that surrender was over, how long did you have to stay before you finally worked your way to the point that you could?
It wasn't, I had enough points to be shipped home then. It wasn't very long. A couple of months and then I was on my way home.
Tell me about your trip home.
Well, it was like a cruise, one of these cruise ships, I guess. I didn't do anything. I just took it easy, and I knew I wasn't going to stay in the Marine Corps, and I just doped off where I could and just made a good trip of it.
Where'd you all come in?
San Diego. We left from San Diego and came back to San Diego.
What was it like stepping back on the United States?
It was mighty good. It was a mighty good feeling. When I left to go overseas, I looked back at that shore and I wondered if I was going to ever see it again. You had to think about it. You couldn't help it. I had never been any further than Broad Street in my life. And here I was going 17,000 miles away from home.
Then you came back cross country.
On a troop train. Well, not a troop train, but a train. We went over on a troop train to San Diego from Camp Lejeune. And then we came back to Bainbridge, Maryland. That's where I was discharged.
Tell me about coming all the way back.
Well, it was just a joyous ride, a real happy occasion. The war was over and I was alive and hadn't lost any limbs, and I was real happy.
When you got home, who was the first person you saw that you knew?
I guess my foster mother, because I went straight home. She was happy to see me too. Let me tell you a little experience I had over there while I was on Guadalcanal. It was my fault. Colonel Robb sent a runner out in the field to get me, told me to report to his office on the double. And when I got there, he says, Corporal, do you know a Mrs. Oliver? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I've got a letter here from the Red Cross, and she's inquiring about you. She said she hadn't heard from you for so long, and she's wondering about you. He said, what's the problem? He said, are we working you that hard that you haven't got time to write home? I said, no, sir. Well, he wrote me, he read me the riot act up one side and down the other. He said, I don't ever want to see you back here again on an occasion like this. I said, no, sir. I've often wondered, his name was Rob, and I often wondered if he was from Norfolk, Virginia. I often wondered if he was any kin to our Governor Rob.
Probably was. All the time.
Because Governor Rob was in the Marines too.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Absolutely was.
I've often wondered.
That's interesting. Go look that one up. What did you do after the war?
I went back to laying bricks. I was a bricklayer before I left. I was an apprentice. And I went back to laying bricks, and I've done it all my life. I'm a retired burnt clay artist.
Still doing it too?
Yeah.
By this time, you know how to do it.
I think so.
Probably. Absolutely. Your generation, when it came to World War II, everybody just stepped up.
Everybody, if you weren't in the service, people looked at you kind of funny. They really did. They said, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you in the service?
Pretty straightforward about it too.
Everybody I knew was in the service. All my buddies, everybody. All my brothers.
What do you think the war did, and what do you think it preserved?
For me personally, it made me appreciate my country a whole lot more. I haven't been all around the world, but I've been in quite a few places, and this is the best place I know of to live in the United States. It made me appreciate our country.
Are there other ways that it changed you besides appreciating the country?
Well, it matured me, I think. I was a kid when I went in, but I was a man when I came out.
Yeah, 17 when you went in.
Yep.
when you look back at those nearly 3 months on Okinawa, what are the memories that just flash to mind?
Well, one thing that's always stuck in my mind, as we were going south, I saw this little baby that somebody had abandoned on the side of the road. And I picked it up. And I saw these Okinawan civilians coming towards us. And I gave this child to one of them. And as we were going on down the road further, I looked back, and they had dropped that child on the side of the road again. And that's always stuck in my mind. I'm sorry I didn't take that child with me, although I don't know what I would have done with it. But it always bothered me.
Very different place.
I was often wondered if it survived, if anybody had picked it up.
What things happened over there that made you proud to be an American?
Well, there were so many things, it's hard to pinpoint anything.
What are some?
Well, I really, it's just everything in general, I guess.
Did you keep good friends?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going to see some of them the 25th of this month, I hope. I've already got my reservations and everything to go to Las Vegas. With the 6th Marine Division is have its reunion in Las Vegas. It's starting the 25th of September. Not this month, next month. And I'm going. My son is taking me.
That'll be fun.
Yep. I'll see some of those boys I haven't seen for some time. Of course, a lot of us are dead now.
Yeah. The bond that you had, lifelong bond.
It lasts forever. Once a Marine, you'll always be a Marine. That's true. They must brainwash you, I guess.
Not necessarily bad.
But that's true. It's a bond there that you just can't get away from.
How would you?
My commanding officer lives up here in Hot Springs, Virginia. I'm going up there to see him pretty soon. Lieutenant Folks. He was a tennis professional up there at Hot Springs in a resort prior to World War II, and he went back there. He's living there now.
I bet he could throw a mean grenade.
Last time I saw him, I think I've been to 3 reunions. We used to have them just for the mortar platoon that I was in. Of course, he was there each time. But the mortar platoon, as the men have died off and has shrunk, so now they no longer have that. This is the 6th Marine Division reunion that I'm going to in September. But Lieutenant Folks, of course, I was just a kid, and he looked like he was a giant of a man when I first joined the mortar platoon with him. The last time I saw him, though, he looked like he had shrunk up, and I done got bigger than he is.
The close call you had of the Japanese guys sneaking through and their friend killing him. Did you have any other close calls like that?
Yes, and when we were assaulting Sugarloaf Hill, we were being shelled heavily. And we were dug in behind an embankment, and a shell landed on the other side, and I was laying on my stomach. And when that shell hit, it pushed some of that dirt over on top of us. And I firmly believe if I'd been laying on my back, I don't believe I would have gotten up and gotten out of there. But I pushed myself up and got the dirt off me. That was
a pretty good load of dirt.
It was. It caved that whole embankment over on top of us. Not only on me, but several other Marines too. But I'm glad I was laying on my stomach. That was
That's sort of
as
like,
far as I'm concerned, as I know, that was the closest I've come to anything really happening to me.
and everybody got everybody else.
Oh yeah,
out.
everybody got hurt all right.
That's one of those things you Marines do. You don't leave anybody
No.
behind.
Try not to.
Mhm. No. Still, well, you're still leading the way today over in Iraq.
It seemed like they're doing the majority of the fighting.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I guess they are. But it's a different it's an entirely different kind of war over there now than what we knew who the enemy was. There was no
Yeah.
doubt about that. But over there in Iraq, you don't know who the enemy is. That's the bad part.
Don't
He can have a gun, step inside there, and next thing you know, he may be out on the street and a great big old sheet or something. You don't know who it is.
Yeah.
It's an entirely new warfare.
When we edit these films together, they're gonna go in front of kids. And if one of those kids is sitting here and looking and saying, why did you fight in World War II? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that our country was in great peril, that I didn't want to be saying Heil Hitler or bowing down to a Japanese emperor. That's why I went in there.
It worked.
That's why I went in
Thank
there.
you, sir. It worked. We're just speaking English. Hey.